Could you talk a little about how incivility is so adversely affecting our culture in such a material way?
Absolutely. So, as you say, I began looking at the issue of incivility in the culture. I discovered, according to a particular survey, Civility in America 2019 Solutions for Tomorrow by public relations firm Weber Shandwick, they found that 68% of Americans consider civility in America to be a major problem. 68%. 25% consider it to be a problem. Only 7% say it's not a problem. 93% say that it is. And then they list top 10 consequences of incivility: online bullying, harassment, violent behavior, hate crimes, intimidation and threats, intolerance, people feeling less safe in public spaces, discrimination, less community engagement, feelings of isolation and loneliness. That's your devotional thought for the day, right? So this is obviously an epidemic, and that was what I wanted to speak into.
Well, thank you for that. And essentially, what you're saying is we have more than one pandemic going on right now. One pandemic is a viral pandemic, and the other is one that's kind of viral in the social context, in that it's spreading across our country in the form of incivility. How should we think about civil discourse? What should be some guardrails for keeping the conversation intact and online and respectful in the form of its exchange, so that we can learn from that and make sure that we're honoring that and we're honoring each other in this exchange, more beyond today, but also with future speakers we might invite, and making sure that we stay on point and within the boundaries of civility.
Yeah, that no, what a great question. What a great foundational question, and not just for today, but for other conversations as we'll have them down the way. What comes to mind anyway for me is two what appear to be competing beliefs, two competing truths. In philosophy, we speak of antinomies as accepting apparently contradictory facts as both true. The way that light travels, for instance, Bohr's model of complementarity, by some measures it's particle, by some it's wave. Well, it can't be both, but it seems like it is. So we accept both of those at the same time. In theological terms, Christians say God is three in one, and Jesus is fully divine, fully human. So there's this kind of balance we need to maintain. Well, in this context, I would say the balance is we need to be absolutely transparent about what we believe. Need to be absolutely straightforward. We need to tell people what we think. We need to feel the freedom to be able to do that. And podcasts like this, conversations like this, are a terrific means toward that end. But at the same time, we need to be so careful not to impugn the motives of those with whom we disagree, not to assume that because they disagree with us that we know why, that we understand the motive behind that, that we understand the reason why they feel as they do about this, to try to get out of our prism and see through their prism, to try to get to their meta-narrative, try to get to their founding principles, try to get to their presuppositions, and see if I can understand this issue in that context. I can illustrate that very, very quickly. I've been doing a lot of work recently on the so-called Equality Act that is being discussed by the House of Representatives again this week. It passed in 2019. From there to go to the Senate. It would, as you know, would elevate to civil rights protected class.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is that the first element, in order to have true, genuine civil discourse, is the freedom and the confidence and the security to be able to speak your mind in a transparent fashion.
Know what you believe and why you believe it. Exactly.
Yes. And the second element, if I hear you correctly, is empathy.
That's right.
And almost like a form of compassion. The idea is you want to hear what the other person has to say and genuinely inquire as to what that person has to say and why they're saying it, and not just the output, but the origin of the thinking that supports the output.
The origin is the point. Okay. Exactly. What are the presuppositions? We all have presuppositions. What are their presuppositions? Where are they coming from, as my kids would say? We have to get past what they're saying to why they're saying it.
Very good. It sounds to me like you're doing what you can to anchor your belief system as well as your inquiry into others' belief systems in morality and ethics. It's just not a religious issue. It's a morality and an ethics issue. Is that correct?
Thank you for saying that. On a larger issue, it's exactly right. The issues that I try to address, the meta-narrative concerns that I have, transcend evangelical Christianity. As important as I believe, obviously, biblical values would be, we're really having conversation beyond that and outside of that, and issues and concerns that I think all Americans, really all humans, on some level really need to be thinking about. And I really want us to look at it, whatever the issue is, from that perspective, rather than merely from one particular point of view that happens to be mine. That's exactly right.
Very good. So we have the first one is freedom of speech, and including that is context and confidence and a number of things. The second thing is empathy. What's the third thing?
Well, I think at the end of the day, and this is a biblical point of view, Ephesians 4:15, speak the truth in love. At the end of the day, even where you and I have to disagree, where I understand your presupposition, I understand where you're coming from, hopefully you understand mine, and we simply are going to agree to disagree, let's do so in a way that advances discourse rather than advancing division. Let's not see the other as the enemy. Let's not see the other as the threat that so often the caricature drives us toward. Let's see this as an engagement toward common ground where we can find it, and toward a better future where we can build it together. Let's find common cause together. And when we do that, we're building a more civil society, even when we disagree on the issues that remain foundational to us.
So what's also coming through to me in this exchange is that there's a commitment to inquire.
Mm.
In other words, it's not dueling monologues and dueling positions, but rather almost a Socratic method of inquiry and dialogue and questions to ferret out or flush out, if you will, develop each other's ideas so that there's an exchange of understanding in addition to hopefully the development of a solution. Does that make sense?
Perhaps if I haven't learned something in today's conversation, I haven't been listening. As you know, out of your legal background, the Socratic method of seeking to draw out truth, a dialectical approach where we're both learning something and we come to a third that's greater than either of us individually, the sum is greater than the parts, is absolutely the goal here, I think. If we're going to build a civil discourse in a secular democracy where the word God nowhere appears in the Constitution, we have to be able to do that on a level of commonality, on a level of consensual morality, on a level of a larger agenda, larger purpose to which we're going together. That kind of conversation, that kind of hard listening, that kind of humility is, I think, essential to the democratic experiment and to the future of our discourse and our civility.
What are you seeing in three areas popping up for you? You're obviously, you're still involved with a variety of different organizations. Some of those have political aspects of it. So that means you kind of have to be an observer of the political sphere,
Mhm.
but you're also a father and a grandfather. So you happen to see what happens at dining room tables. What are you seeing at dining room tables today? Is that a microcosm what's happening on television, or is something else happening at dining room tables and with families across the nation?
Yeah, everything I'm seeing and reading and a little of what I'm experiencing myself is that unfortunately, in dining room tables as a microcosm of the larger culture, we're seeing a continued siloing. We're seeing a continued echo chamber where we only want to listen to Fox News or CNN. We only want to subscribe to this podcast, but not that. We only want to have our news services narrated for us. We want there to be agreement around ideological issues. It's just too hard to disagree with people over the election or over what the issue might be. So we're seeing this kind of segregating happening sociologically. It's not just red state, blue state anymore. It's red areas in states and blue areas in states. And we're now seeing people making decisions about where they want to live and raise their kids in light of ideological concerns. I understand that on one level, people are just tired of the conflict, tired of the stuff, just don't want to deal with it anymore. On the other, though, it's awfully hard to have civil discourse if there's no one in the room with whom I disagree, if I can't get across the chasm on some level. Todd, I saw a thing the other day that more Republicans and Democrats are opposed to their children dating somebody from the other party than ever before. To me, that's
Wow.
frightening.
Isn't that How can we accelerate our progress where these kinds of ideas are more inculcated into our culture and our community with kind of a cultural impunity, if you will? How can we be more loving in that regard?
Yeah, that's a great question. How do we, and impunity is the right word as well. On the positive side, we certainly have tools at our disposal we didn't have 50 years ago. We have the ability with the megaphone of a cell phone, right, to be able to communicate in ways that we never have been able to do before without the filters that used to exist. And a lot of the barriers to communication used to exist. On the other side, unfortunately, it's this kind of curating of content where I only want to listen to people with whom I agree. So I never get to people who can change my mind or I can change their mind. So I think we need to be really intentional about this. I think we need to almost develop quota systems where we say, how many people have I talked to this week with whom I disagree on issues? How many places have I gone to get sources I know I'm going to disagree with? How much am I intentionally pushing myself beyond my own opinion kind of echo chambers? And not to mention being able to communicate in those other places where people might disagree with me. We're going to have an intentionality and impunity and intentionality about this while we do it in a compassionate spirit of humility. That kind of initiative is going to be really essential, I think, going forward.